to the Hymnbook.
WGNH-LP and Gethsemane Anabaptist Church present Nuggets from the Hymnbook. Stay with us and discover the richness of history and Christian experience in your hymnbook. Well, greetings. I trust you're in good health and have spent this day walking in the Lord so far, and I hope you're ready to receive a blessing and a challenge today from our show. I sometimes think about the kinds of listeners we have to this radio station. I could try to envision what's on the other side of this microphone, and I try to think about why you're here. And I recognize you're not here for applesauce. You're not here for baby food. You're not here because you're looking to be fed out of a Gerber jar with something that keeps you stroked and burped and entertained. No, I know a simple twist of the knob would give that to you if that's what you wanted. Now, I know you. I know you. That's not the kind of person you are. You're the kind of person that's willing to put up with a lot in order to be in a place where the Scriptures are exalted and where a holy God is proclaimed as King over all. You, my friend, are listening to this radio station because your appetite is different. So I don't want to disappoint you. I want to put something out there to challenge you, make you think, and hopefully work as a co-laborer with Christ to make the bubble of your knowledge and experience a little bigger, and your life a little richer, and your ministry for Him a little more effective. So with that in mind, let's see, are we ready now to receive a blessing from our hymn for today? Yeah, it's our favorite of many people. You know, you already know it, you've heard it 100 times, The Love of God. In his book, Then Sings My Soul, by Robert J. Morgan, Morgan writes this: this hymn was written in a citrus packing house in Pasadena, California, by a German-born Christian named Fredrick M. Lehman. At age 4, Fredrick and his family had immigrated to America, settling down in Iowa. He was converted to Christ at age 11 while walking through a crabapple orchard. He eventually entered the ministry and pastored churches in the Midwest, but his greatest love was gospel music. He compiled 5 songbooks and published hundreds of songs. In 1917, his finances had gone sour, and he found himself working in a packing house in Pasadena, moving 30 tons of lemons and oranges a day. Well, one morning as he arrived at work, a song was forming in his mind. He had been thinking about the limitlessness of God's love, and during breaks he sat on an empty lemon crate and jotted down words with a stubby pencil. Arriving home that evening, he went to an old upright piano and began putting down notes to his words, and he finally had a melody in 2 stanzas, only 2 stanzas. But almost all gospel songs of that era had at least 3 stanzas. So what would he do? Well, at length he thought of some lines he had recently heard in a sermon. Here are the lines that he thought about. Could we with ink the ocean fill, and were the skies of parchment made, were every stalk on earth a quill, and every man a scribe by trade, to write the love of God above would drain the ocean dry, nor could the scroll contain the whole, though stretched from sky to sky. Well, that verse perfectly formed the 3rd stanza. But the question was, who had written it? As Fredrick heard the story, it was composed on the wall of an insane asylum by an unknown inmate. Well, perhaps someone did find it there, but we now know that the words originally came from the pen of an 11th century Jewish poet in Germany named Rabbi Meir ben Isaac Nehori. Fredrick lived the rest of his life in California, and he wrote a number of hymns before his death in 1948. So, that's the story, according to Robert J. Morgan. Beyond the information he shares, I've been blessed to be able to draw from the knowledge of my friends concerning this song. For example, Brother Darren Trull, who's a missionary out of the Gethsemane Anabaptist Church to the Dominican Republic, discovered more about this person that Robert Morgan calls a Jewish poet. The person, Rabbi Meir of Worms, Germany, or Worms if you wish. You may recall that the city of Worms, you Lutherans probably know this, he's famous in Martin Luther's day. Well, Rabbi Meir was on the scene 400 years before Luther was born in that same city. We'll talk about that a little bit more in a minute. Not long after I learned from Darren about that little tidbit about Rabbi Meir, I followed up by asking my friend from Israel about the poem and its fame in Jewish circles. My friend, he's an Orthodox Jew who lives in Beersheba, Israel. He speaks several languages, including Aramaic. Aramaic is the language that Jesus spoke. And Avi responded this way. This is what he said. Yes, this is true concerning my question about the love of God. He said, this is true. Show that hymn to any Orthodox Jew, and they'll be able to recognize the words of Akdamut Milin. That's the name of the hymn, the poem. An Aramaic poem read on Shavuot. Shavuot is Pentecost. The relevant excerpt of this poem is as follows, and he quotes here the words to four lines actually from Akdamut Milin. I'm not going to read those because if you know Aramaic, you'll laugh at my pronunciations, and if you don't know Aramaic, you're going to wonder why I waste your time. So anyway, he says that this literally translates from the Aramaic. It says this: infinite great deeds are his, and there is not enough to tell of this. Even if the firmament were parchment, and all the forests were quills, and all the seas and bodies of water were ink, and all the inhabitants of the world were scribes. Now, Avi says, granted, when translated literally from the Aramaic, it doesn't retain the original beauty of the poem. I'd say that Lehman did a good job of expressing the sentiments of Akdamut Milin in beautiful English.
Givuran olmin lei, velo sefek prishuta, givil ilu rikiei, kenei kol churshata, dio ilu yamei, vechol mechenishuta, Daire ar asafrei veroshmei rashbata.
So that was the four lines that from that poem, actually sung in Aramaic by a cantor from Pennsylvania. Hope you got a blessing out of that. You know, Baptists running the aisles and so forth. No, I realize that didn't mean a whole lot to many of you, but you know, if there are Jews listening, you probably said, hey, I've heard that on Shavuot. And I guess the Christians ought to ask yourself, you know, if James or Peter or John or somebody was listening to that, what would they think? Yeah, it's something to think about. I told you we were not going to give you applesauce here. We'll give you something to think about. Anyway, here's a version of the song that you may be more used to hearing.
The love of God is greater far than tongue or pen can ever tell. It goes beyond the highest star and reaches to the lowest hell. The guilty pair bowed down with care. God gave his son to win his erring child. He reconciled and pardoned from his sin. Could we within the ocean feel, and were the skies of parchment made, where every star on earth a quill, and every man a scribe by trade, to write the love of God above would drain the ocean
don't want to be guilty of ignoring a verse that doesn't often get sung, but it's a very, very powerful verse. When years of time shall pass away, and earthly thrones and kingdoms fall, when men who here refuse to pray on rocks and hills and mountains call, God's love so pure shall still endure, all measureless and strong, redeeming grace to Adam's race, the saints and angels' song. Boy, what about that? You know, you've read in Revelation when it talks about the people, the great men and the mighty men and the captains and the kings of the earth running to the rocks and the mountains and begging the rocks and the mountains to fall on us and hide us from the face of him that sitteth upon the throne and from the wrath of the Lamb. God's love is still there. God's love toward mankind still in the midst of his fury. Boy, what a God. What a marvelous God. Let me read you also concerning the theme of God's love, a poem that I think is just wonderful. It's written by John Kent. The poem is very Calvinistic, and you know, we're not Calvinist here. The Calvinist says that God does everything by eternal decree, and the Bible believer says, well, it doesn't say decree here. It says foreknowledge. So anyway, here's the poem concerning God's love. 'Twas with an everlasting love that God his own elect embraced, before he made the worlds above, or earth on her huge columns placed. Long ere the sun's refulgent ray primeval shades of darkness drove, we on his sacred bosom lay, loved with an everlasting love. Love, when a wretch defiled with sin, at war with heaven, in league with hell, a slave to every lust obscene, and living, lived but to rebel. Then in the glass of his decrees, Christ and his bride appeared as one, her sin by imputation his, while she in spotless splendor shone. O love, how high thy glories swell, how great, immutable, and free! 10,000 sins as black as hell are swallowed up, O love, in thee. Believer, here thy comfort stands. From first to last, salvation's free, and everlasting love demands an everlasting song from thee.
This is Amos Presley, thanking you for joining us as we've pushed back the dollar-driven contemporary Christian music industry and have connected with saints whose songs have stood the test of time. Please feel free to write me. My email address is amospresley@yahoo.com. Amos Presley is spelled AMOSPRESSLEY. That's all one word. AmosPresley@yahoo.com. If you're looking for a church where these grand old Christ-honoring songs are sung, feel free to visit Gethsemane Anabaptist Church. Please join us next time for more Nuggets from the Hymnbook.